Like, so obviously, given the Sunday streams that I usually do with Scott's Armour is just taking a bit of time away, from what it seems. So for anybody that wasn't aware, myself and Sensum, potentially in the future, provided how long Scott's Armour's away for, I'll have guests on or whatever. But tonight, obviously, I'll probably go over the vast majority, or not all, but some of the nonsense that took place at the S&P conference. Most of which, the things that I find the most editable anyway, I've already clipped. But 8:30 tonight on my channel, it'll be myself and Sensum. That said, though, there is obviously something that I want to address, something that initially took place, or was initially spoken about at First Minister's questions. There was the odd burst in my comments from the few clips I should say, pertaining to this, and the subsequent mention of it at the conference, the S&P conference is taking place this weekend. Obviously, the odd person's not entirely sure what this is about. Most do, but some don't. And I just want to kind of go over it and effectively debunk the bullshit, pardon my French, that's been espoused yet again, the hyperbole, the over-dramatisation, and the ever-growing pathetic attempts to deflect from what's really taking place here in Scotland. So, without further ado...
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that some ethnic minority teaching professionals have experienced racist online abuse after sharing their plans for more diversity in Scottish education at the Scottish Learning Festival.
So, right off the bat, I will interject here. These clips are available for you to go and watch in full if you haven't seen them already on my channel. But right off the bat, she says here that they're simply at a teaching learning festival to provide diverse materials, etc. She also let me play it back just ever so slightly. Sorry.
After sharing their plans for more diversity in Scottish education.
After sharing their plans, for more diversity in Scottish education. Right off the bat, we're talking about critical race theorists here. Okay, this has been the whole point of contention from the start of this. They are critical race theorists. Malina, whatever her second name is, Nazut Utamani, Kajida Mohammed, the three main perpetrators of this, but it's not limited to, they sit on government panels with the intention to reform Scottish education to have a critical race theorist framework. All of the materials, I went through some of these materials on my channel. In fact, the video, for anybody that's not aware, is just down here. View all, let me see. Fuck's sake. So I went over it extensively in this stream here, the critical race theorist seeth. I went over a little bit of it here on the follow-up. Melina, the critical race theorist, is on the retreat. I'll come to this in a second as well, because this gets a mention, the nonsense over the school. Yet again, more hyperbole. There was nothing untoward that was said whatsoever, but this is how these people fucking operate. This one here, the critical race theorists cry as they strike you, and even as my mouse is highlighted over it, that's the resources there, you know? Just have a wee gander. All this here, this is all their shit. All of this here, the link's still in the description, it's critical race theorist material. This here, their Padlet, that's what they called it. I went through some of this at the time in this video. It's critical race theorist material, for the most part, by and large, published by critical race theorists. Just because it might not in certain areas explicitly mention critical race theory, the fact of the matter is when they refer to anti-racism, this is their deflection. Anti-racism is critical race theory when you realise what they define racism as. We're not talking about seeing somebody who's a different colour and disliking them on that basis. No, we're talking about people who insinuate that there's unconscious bias, environmental racism, systemic racism, institutional racism, you name it. There is a myriad of different definitions, but the reality of the matter is it targets whiteness, and by extension, because this is in an educational setting, it's targeting white children. Alright? So here, Q-Cab Stewart really fucking annoys me because she always brags about how she's the first brown woman in the parliament, despite the fact the only reason she got into that position was because she went and sat in a seat, or went to ran in a seat where there was an SNP candidate standing there. It's the only reason she's got in, and ever since she's got in, all she's ever done is spoke explicitly to no end about brown people. Oh yeah, we're all one apparently. Anyway, I'm not going to get bogged down in that. My point is, all of this stuff is there for you to go and see yourself if you've not seen it.
Sir, I'd like to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that some ethnic minority teaching professionals have experienced racist online abuse after sharing...
I'll let it play in a second, but just one more thing. Abuse. This is another common tactic that they've all adopted here. Abuse. There was no abuse. It was people calling into question the fact that they were all celebrating their little Padlet, where they were all celebrating or patting themselves in the back and coming forward with suggestions on how they can brown or diversify the teaching workforce. You know? So people were just simply saying, well, if you want to diversify the teaching workforce, then does that not mean you're discriminating against Scottish people? That's racist because anybody can be Scottish apparently, but it's also being classified as abuse, because that way it then gives them the justification that they require to not actually respond to any of the criticism and the critique that's been placed their way. You're full of shit, Q-Cab Stewart.
Their plans for more diversity in Scottish education at the Scottish Learning Festival. And will the First Minister join me in condemning the racist abuse faced by St Albert's Primary in her constituency and the racist graffiti that has been found on Glasgow University campus in my constituency? Will she further agree with me that anti-racist education is important for ensuring a more diverse and inclusive Scotland?
Now, what does that mean? First of all, what she's talking about is apparently there's been anti-Chinese graffiti in universities. I don't know anything about that, to be honest. Backtracking ever so slightly to the racism that the St Albert's Primary School received. Again, there was no abuse. Again, there was no racism. It was people... Now, there's people that have gone through every single tweet and they can't find any racism. I went through quite a lot of these tweets. I seen nothing that could be classified as racism by their very low bar / standards, by the way. There might have been the odd spicy tweet that I missed, but for the most part, by and large, didn't see anything. But again, it's just the same pattern that's repeating itself here, the same pattern that they apply to the quote-unquote racism the critical race theorists received. You know, they just applied the same pattern. But what did she just say there? Let me just repeat this again. What the fuck does this mean, pardon my French?
A more diverse and inclusive for ensuring a more diverse and inclusive Scotland.
So we need anti-racist education to ensure a more diverse and inclusive Scotland. What does that mean? So we need critical race theory in order to ensure a more inclusive, which is basically equity and pandering and prioritisation and giving a leg up and shoving BAMEs into positions of power, etc, etc. But how does a critical race or anti-race, let's play them at their own game, how does an anti-racist education ensure a more diverse Scotland? The jury's out on that one. So let's hear what Thin Lips has to say. How will Thin Lips respond to all this nonsense, this total bullshit?
First Minister.
Oh, get your book out, Sturgeon, because you can't speak from the heart. No. You need a script that you don't write in your big bold writing. Read your script, Thin Lips.
I wholeheartely agree with that, and I'm sure the whole Chamber wholeheartedly agrees with that. No one should ever experience racism, and all of us have a duty to stand firmly in solidarity.
But nobody, see, unless you're talking about this anti-Chinese graffiti, nobody's experienced racism. And I don't even know what this anti-Chinese graffiti was supposed to have said, so I can't even say for certain. Was it against the government? I don't know. You know, if you slag off the Israeli government, you're anti-Semite. So, slag off the Chinese government, would the same principle apply? Don't know. But nobody else has experienced racism. So again, we're off to a very bad start here. Your script's already written in bad faith.
With anyone who does, and against those who are racist. The vile racist abuse that was directed at teaching professionals, staff...
Critical race theorists.
And children on the back of the Scottish Learning Festival should be condemned, and I do condemn it. Let me make comment, particularly given how close to my own heart it is, the experience of pupils at St Albert's Primary in my own constituency of Pollock Shields. St Albert's is a school I know very well. It's a fantastic school with a fantastic head teacher, fantastic teachers and utterly outstanding young people. I was privileged on Friday to visit that school, as I have been so many times in the past. Racism always sickens me, but there is nothing that turns my stomach more than the idea of adults, whether they're from Scotland or anywhere else in the world, that can look at a photograph of beautiful, clever children and only see the colour of their skin. It is despicable, it is disgusting, it has no place in Scotland, and I hope all of us unite in utter condemnation of vile racists everywhere.
Vile racists, you know, nothing was racist. Nothing at all. And of course people are going to see the colour because it's Scotland. And the fact of the matter is, it was a school that by the head teachers were admitting it's 95% non-white. This is Scotland. So you kind of prove the point. Anyway, let's move on to the conference.
The resolution will be moved by CoCab Stewart, MSP, and seconded by Councillor Christina Cannon. So welcome to CoCab.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Conference. I take no pleasure in having to bring this as a topical motion.
Oh, I think you do, though, because all you ever do is push for this. In fact, there's videos on my channel from 2020 where you were advocating for anti-racist education, etc., etc. So do not hand me that you take no pleasure in bringing this shit up.
But after the last few weeks of education and our young people and all the staff and parents that have been subjected to despicable and absolutely disgraceful racist behaviour and abuse.
Again, this has all been debunked, not just by my video here, because I'm not showcasing anything, and it'd be quite difficult for me to showcase anything anyway, considering the fact in the critical race theories camp they've blocked all their Twitters now, bar one. But as I've already said, the videos that I highlighted before I continued playing this, just go and look yourself. Go and look yourself. Nothing at all.
I had no choice, so I am grateful for the opportunity to bring this. Over the past few weeks, we have seen 3 separate incidents that I want to talk about today. So the first one was actually at the Scottish Learning Festival. So the Scottish Government, being progressive, launching a national discussion on education and all.
Being progressive and launching a national discussion on education at the Scottish Learning Festival, where you were misleading the public by not telling them that you are allowing critical race theorists to sit on your government panels, you're allowing critical race theorists to determine the future of our education system, you're allowing critical race theorists to masquerade as anti-racist, then you're going to stand on a podium and fucking defend these people by insinuating that the people questioning their belief system and questioning their rhetoric are in fact vile, evil racists. Yeah, I get it.
All its values of inclusive and diversity.
Oh, let me play this back, because this is what I'm on about, this wet wipery.
Scottish Learning Festival. So the Scottish Government, being progressive, launching a national discussion on education and all its values of inclusive and diversity.
Oh, is that
as
what
part
it was?
of
Is that what it was? Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, that's, of course, that's what it is. Yeah. All about inclusive and being diverse. Yeah? Yeah, okay.
that, there were teachers that presented materials for our teachers to use.
Critical race theorist materials for teachers in Scotland to use. And you wonder why people are pissed off? Not pissed off enough, if you ask me. If anything, they showed up, from what I've seen all over Twitter and whatnot, because this is where we're referring to, there was a high sense of decorum that was involved in all of the critiques and criticism. There was nobody being outlandish or racist, but, you know, everything's racist to these people because that's how they operate. Their optics, their worldview, everything's racist.
Looking at making the curriculum more anti-racist and looking at decolonisation of the curriculum. Okay. So the very teachers that presented materials for our teachers to use, looking at making the curriculum more anti-racist and looking at decolonisation of the curriculum. So the very
Oh, wait, sorry.
At making the curriculum more anti-racist and looking at decolonisation of the curriculum. So the very materials that are hopefully going to be used to address these issues were then used as a reason for people to actually come out online and actually racially abuse the teachers that were presenting these materials.
You see how this works? Because we're not talking about quote-unquote anti-racist materials here. Right? Even that's questionable. We're talking about critical race theorists presenting materials that are founded or predicated on the back of the ideology that comes with being a critical race theorist. People call this into question, and then the manipulation that comes from this book, and she's not the only one, by the way. There's a few others that had something to say on this subject matter at this conference. But the way that this manipulative tactic works is they then say, ha, the very materials that are going to stamp out the racism were used against them, because they're hiding behind the term anti-racist. It's not anti-racism. That is just a flowery disguise for critical race theory at this point. That could not be any more clear. I have spent months and months and months on my channel to the point where it borderline burnt me out, going through all of their bullshit and covering them for months. It's all there. I can prove it. These people don't even realise that I've been covering them for months, because it was only when I called them out on Twitter, like the rest of everybody else did, I finally got blocked. Had they known I'd been doing this for a long time, and get it up if you try to get my YouTube taken down, because it's stored on 2 separate platforms alongside YouTube. However, I've been doing this for months. They have no idea how much I've got on them. I know what I'm talking about. She's a liar. This is fucking remarkable.
So our profession was under threat.
Our profession was under threat.
I have to acknowledge that the fact that the GTC and Education Scotland, EIS, there have been many organisations that have come out and called it out. And I'm asking...
Because they're riddled with the same people that are on these panels. It's like, just because organisations call something out, it does not mean that what they're calling out or the reasoning for calling it out is correct. They're all the same. You all spread the same toxicity.
Conference to also call out this kind of ridiculous and despicable behaviour. The other thing that's happened, which we cannot get away from, is as a constituency MSP, we get to go to various schools, visit the children, see the work that they're doing, and they get a chance to share all that amazing work. So Nicola Sturgeon, not only being our First Minister, but also being a constituency MSP in the most diverse constituency in Scotland, and Glasgow Kelvin is the third one.
This right here, I said on the video that I made pertaining to the school fiasco. She's just proved the point indirectly, because what was taking place on Twitter was people in abundance calling into question the questionable demographic of the school. Albeit it was just a photo of a class, people were pointing out that this was a bizarre demographic for a classroom in Scotland. She just said there that Sturgeon represents the most diverse, quote-unquote, which means not Scottish, less Scottish, more brown and black and more whatever, but not Scottish, right? Sturgeon represents the most diverse constituency in Glasgow. She, QCAB student, represents the third most diverse area of Glasgow. So again, with diversity meaning brown and black effectively, or just, let's just play along with her little pish, it's not as Scottish as it ordinarily once upon a time was. So people pointing out on Twitter that the class is a questionable demographic, or diverse, if you will, her rebuttal to that, or in her beginning statement of, fighting back against people pointing this out by calling it racist, she then immediately proves these people right by saying that she's in a diverse constituency, most diverse in Scotland. So the people that were mentioning that on Twitter are actually proven correct just by that statement. They're just coming at it from two different angles, really.
Having a picture taken with the wonderful, joyful children, our clever children who are...
Nobody said anything about the kids or slagged them off. They just pointed out the demography. That's all they did. And you've already acknowledged that they were correct to do so by admitting that she was in the most diverse part of Scotland. So
happy playing and learning together. Who on earth could twist that into something horrific and horrible?
But they didn't know that they just did the exact same thing that you've done. By you acknowledging that she represents the most diverse part of Scotland, you just did the exact same thing that these people on Twitter did. They just came out from a different angle. So you can throw the hyperbole you want into the mix here, but this is the point. This is what they do. This is deflection 101. Oh my God.
We must remember that education is for all, and Scotland is a beautiful, vibrant, diverse, inclusive country, and we will not tolerate these kind of...
Beautiful, diverse. It's like you're just rubbing it in our face with this progressive shit that our country's becoming less Scottish. And then if you point this out, you're racist. So they're allowed to say it. They're allowed to come on it from the angle that this is something to be celebrated. But if you come out and say it's not something that should be celebrated, or even just question why it should be celebrated, you're racist. You're in the wrong.
of signs of graffiti going around. It's cowardly. It's cowardly. Just before I finish off moving this motion, I just want to sort of when I was at school, in primary school, I'd like to say as a contrast to the pictures of the beautiful children at St Albert's Primary, in my primary school, I was the only brown face.
And what? That's how it should be. I'm sorry, but that's how it should be. It's Scotland for...
And the issues of racism, they were the same. The abuse was there. So make no mistake, this is not a question of numbers. This is a question of racism. And it is totally and utterly unacceptable.
Oh, nothing is racist. So.
I do want to acknowledge the fact that I was able to raise a question at Holyrood earlier this week, and we heard a very robust response from the First Minister herself raised in the Chamber, and I hope that that brings some comfort to everybody that's watching this, but especially to all our wonderful young people that are in schools and their parents and their teachers to know that this is not Scotland. Scotland is a welcoming, open, diverse country, and when we are faced with this kind of thing, look at how the communities came together and the messages of love.
They came together because of your hyperbole. They came together because of your lies and your manipulation. They didn't come together to combat the evil, vile racists, because there was no evil, vile racism that took place, let alone evil, vile racists that were saying anything untoward. And again, rubbing it in our face. It's diverse. It's, do you know what? Right, there's one more thing I want to show. This stuff just really irritates me because it's fucking nonsense.
Welcome, Councillor Cannon.
Good afternoon, Conference. I just want to start from the beginning by joining COCAB in condemning the racist attacks on education professionals and school pupils.
No racist attacks. Not educational professionals, but critical race theorists. And again, nothing was said about school children, and they just pointed out the demography that's already been acknowledged. So
in Glasgow that we've seen over the last time is abhorrent. But for grown adults to take to a social media website and direct it at smart, clever, talented children is disgusting.
They didn't know.
Our teachers and school staff are working tirelessly every single day, doing everything they can to support our young people through their learning journeys, to make sure they're prepared for exams and assessments, to help close the poverty-related attainment gap, and to support our young people in becoming the best people they can be. The last thing they need or deserve is faceless trolls abusing them because of the colour of their skin.
They weren't.
Conference. Scotland is a beautiful country in so many ways, but if we really want to create a better country for everyone who lives here, we need to address the underlying racism problem that rears its ugly head every so often. We now need even further action to ensure that racism, whether it be in person or online, does not stain our society anymore. And let's be clear, conference, ethnic minorities who live, work, study and volunteer in Scotland are far more significant to Scotland's economy, society and culture than any racist ever will be.
You heard it here, folks. Well, there's one thing coming up.
The most recent incidents of racist abuse that was directed at teaching professionals and at pupils in a Glasgow primary school after the Scottish Learning Festival underlines why we need anti-racist education now.
See? There you have it again. Calling out critical race theorists is exactly why we need critical race theory.
We need to put concrete plans in place to ensure a diverse workforce in educational settings so our young people have role models that they can look up to.
We need more brown and black teachers. So again, we're now just doing a complete 360 right back to where this all started, because the critical race theorists at this early learning festival, where their anti-racist materials were talking about ways to diversify the teaching workforce. People called them out. They called it racist. There's this woman saying it right now. What a fucking joke the SNP are. Honestly, this is a joke.